Hi, welcome to Biology 231, and this is our first chapter we're going to start going through together. This is going to be one of the most important chapters for you as you go through all of Biology 231, 232, and 233, because we're going to start introducing to you the idea of anatomical terms and anatomical structures, and basically what is anatomy and what is physiology, right? So this chapter is going to be really important to start your foundation of learning for all of the anatomy and physiology classes that you'll take in the future. So please spend some time to really learn this information and get it in your head to use it in the rest of the term and the rest of 232 and 233 as well. So the way that I work is that I usually break up every chapter into individual sections. So this chapter, I'm going to have 4 different videos talking about 4 different subject matters. So I try to break it up for you so you don't have to try and get all of this information in your head all at one time. So you can work on each section at a time and learn the material and then move on to the next one. While you are listening to these lectures, please have your study guides out and be filling the information in on the study guides. The lectures should correspond with the order of the study guides so that you should be able to follow through and fill them in. The study guides are going to be really important for you as you start preparing for quizzes and exams. The reason is that, well, first of all, every short answer question on my quizzes and exams come directly from the study guides. So you need to be filling those study guides in and having that information in front of you during an exam is really a gift. And then to have it done well is really good. If you have any questions about those study guides, please don't call me, send me an email and ask for help, or bring those study guides to our lab times together and we can work through them together, or the recitation times. So it's important for me that you are filling those in and you feel comfortable with your answers and know that they're correct. So I am not going to correct your study guides every single question. That's just way too much. That's way too much. But I can go through specific questions and answer those specific questions to make sure that you feel confident as you're studying for our exams. All right, so that's how things work. So let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to go ahead and share our slides. So this set of slides is on your course website for week 1. These are the chapter 1 slides that talk about the language of anatomy. So let me bring it up. All right, so first of all, what is anatomy and what is physiology? Anatomy and physiology are all around you. You need to know anatomy and physiology. The basic person needs to know basic anatomy and physiology. We teach that to our kids when they're 2 and 3 years old. What's this? Touch your tummy, touch your arm, touch your elbow, touch your ankle. That's anatomy. Anatomy is structural and anatomy is positional. So we're talking about what something is and where it's located. So that's anatomy. We also cover physiology in this course, and physiology is how things work. So for instance, in this chapter, in this term, we're going to be learning about bone. So bone structure, bone anatomy is going to be, what is the name of this bone? How does it connect to something else? What is this particular part of the bone called? Physiology of the bone of the skeletal system is, how does the bone grow? How does it reform? And how does it repair itself? So that's physiology. Those are functions. So anatomy and physiology, anatomy is structural and physiology is functional. Now, anatomy is going to include what things are made of, where they're located, and associated structures. Physiology is going to be function and individual and cooperative function. So how does building bone, that's the skeletal system, how does that interact with your endocrine system, the hormones that allow you to build bone? So that's physiology. For most students, anatomy is pretty easy to memorize. It's a lot to memorize, but physiology is a little bit more difficult because it's on the cellular level and how things are constructed and how things work to function. Okay, so if we look at anatomy specifically, there are 2 different types of anatomy. There's gross anatomy and there's microscopic anatomy. So gross anatomy, when somebody's saying gross, they don't mean ugh. What they mean is it's something that I can see with my naked eye. So it's macroscopic. So if I hold a bone up, you can see the bone. It's easy to see. That is gross anatomy. So there are different ways to study gross anatomy. We can study surface anatomy, which is the exterior functions, regional anatomy, which is the body area. So I'm going to focus in on the shoulder, for instance. Systemic anatomy, whenever you hear the word systemic, what that means is the entire body. So somebody might have a systemic infection. What that means is they have an infection that's affecting their entire body. Here we say systemic anatomy, which means that we're going to look at all of the organs and how they're working together, how they are structured and how they fit together. Developmental anatomy is really cool. Developmental anatomy is watching how an embryo develops into a little human being. And so how does the heart develop from, how do the structures develop, and when can we see individual structures of that developing embryo into what we would think of as a human being? And then clinical anatomy is going to be medical specialties. Most of you guys are working already. Many of you are already working in the medical field doing different things. And you are working with clinical anatomy. If somebody comes in and they need an x-ray, if somebody is coming into the dental office and they have a broken tooth, those are clinical anatomy subjects. Okay, then there's also microscopic anatomy. And microscopic anatomy, we're going to cover quite a bit in the class, especially in lab. You're going to be seeing it in lab. Now, microscopic anatomy means that it's going to be little tiny things that we can't see with the naked eye. So we have two subspecialties in microscopic anatomy, and that is cytology and histology. Cytology is studying cells. So what does the fibroblast do? What does an osteoblast do? Those are cells you're going to be learning in this term. So what and where are these individual cells? Then histology is the study of tissues and how tissues are interacting and laying on top of each other. Now, in cell biology, if you were in biology 112 last term, you studied cytology. You studied individual cells. But now in our anatomy and physiology class, we're going to be doing mostly histology. And that's actually a fantastic job. You can be a histotechnician, and that's going to be somebody who's going to be looking at slices of tissues and determining if this is cancer, what kind of cancer is it, how ingrown is it to the rest of the body, and lots of other types of studies. But histologist is going to be somebody who does that for a living, which is pretty cool. So you will be looking at different tissues. We're going to look at muscle tissue. That means that we're going to look at different types of cells laying on top of each other, and how do those groups of cells work? Okay, so we talked about anatomy and physiology. What are the differences? We've talked about two different types of anatomy, gross anatomy and microscopic anatomy. Now we're going to talk about different types of physiology. So if you are studying cell physiology, you're studying how the cell works. You did that last term in biology 112. You studied glycolysis. You studied how do you make ATP. Okay, so that's cell physiology. Special physiology is going to be the physiology of a specific organ. Systemic physiology is going to be how that organ fits in with the rest of the body. And pathological physiology is going to be studying anything that's wrong. So this is incorrect physiology. So anatomy, physiology, different types of anatomy, different types of physiology. All right, the last thing that we're going to talk about in this short video is levels of organization. Now, you heard this probably at the very beginning of Biology 112, and that is that when we're studying biology, biologists are awesome. There are so many different stages and levels of organization that a biologist can study. Now, my background is in the chemical or molecular level, the very tiniest little pieces of chemicals that are inside the body. So I studied for my undergrad degree and my graduate degree, I studied biochemistry. I studied DNA and I studied individual proteins. Now we know that those individual proteins and that DNA, all those molecules, they are put together in a very specific way to make a cell. The cell is the first level of life that is living, right? A chemical is not alive, a molecule is not alive, but when we put them together in a very specific way, we create cells, and cells are alive. They're able to divide on their own. They're able to develop and respond to the environment around them. So that's what you studied last term, was chemical and cellular level. Now in this term, we're going to start out next chapter with tissue. We're going to be studying tissues, which is different types of cells in a very specific arrangement and a very structural anatomy, and they're going to function. So we're going to be studying the different levels of tissue, maybe in the heart. So different areas in the heart that are made up of different tissues, and how do they function. Then we're going to put all the tissues together, and then we're going to start studying organs. So every one of these levels is built on top of the level prior. So we start out with chemicals. That's the very simplest way to break down a human body, to biology. Then we put them together to build a cell. Then we build multiple cells together to build tissue. Then we build multiple tissues together to make organs. So in this class, we're going to be studying tissues, organs, and then the next level up are the organ systems. And that's what this picture is showing us here. So these are different organ systems. There are 11 different systems, and you will be studying them through Biology 231, 232, and 233. You're going to be studying every one of those systems. So in this class, we are going to be studying, and then from from organ systems, which is here, then we put all the organ systems together to make an organ, an organism, which is the human body, which is the person. When you have multiple people together, we're studying populations. When we put multiple populations together, we're studying communities. And then when we add non-living things to communities, to these living organisms, then we are studying the ecosystem, and then finally the biosphere. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on those because we are not covering those. Really, in Biology 231, 232, and 233, what we're studying are tissues, and then the organs, and then the organ systems. The organism is going to be the culmination of all those organ systems. Now, as you're going into the medical field, you may work primarily on different levels of organization. You will hopefully, if you are working with a person, hopefully you are going to include all of that person as you're studying them. So we don't just look at a person and look at their organ system. So if somebody comes in with heart failure, we're not just going to look at that person and say, well, your heart is failing, blah, 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 blah. What we want to do is look at that whole organism. So even though these classes do not focus on the organism as a whole, I hope you guys know as you're going into the medical field that you will want to focus on that whole individual, that whole organism. And that's why you take psych classes to go into nursing. Okay, because it's important for us to understand how that person's dealing with the difficulties they're having with their organs and organ systems. All right. For us, for our organ systems, this term, what we're going to be covering is the first organ system we'll go through is the integumentary system. This may be one that you haven't heard of before, integumentary system, but the integumentary system is going to be your skin, hair, nails, and your sweat glands. So we're going to study that first. The function of your integumentary system is going to be protection, primarily protection against the environment. So we're going to stop you from dehydrating by covering you with skin. We're going to keep what's inside, inside, and keep what's outside, outside. Your skin is going to be also really important for keeping your body temperature regulated. So when you get really, really cold, you start to shiver and the hairs on your skin will stand up straight. And that is actually increasing temperature and also increasing a small buffer around your body and keeping heat around your body. When you sweat, you're trying to decrease your body temperature. So you're regulating your body temperature. And then finally, the integumentary system is really important for providing sensory information. So what is the temperature outside? Is it wet? Is it dry? It's going to be giving information about what's going on outside the body to the inside of the body. So we have a lot of sensory nerves that are at our skin surface. So we're going to be studying the integumentary system. You need to know the organs and the function for each one of these systems in general, and then we're going to spend a ton of time studying each one of the systems individually. The second organ system that we'll be studying this term is the skeletal system. And I love this one. This one's so much fun. We're going to learn all 206 bones of the human body. And luckily, most of them are paired or in groups, like the ribs or the vertebrae. So you don't have to memorize actually every individual bone. But, and some of them have lefts and rights. So we're going to be studying the left humerus, the right humerus. So you're going to be learning all the bones of the human body, which is cool. You're also going to be learning about cartilage, ligaments, and bone marrow. These are important organs that make up our skeletal system. Now, what's the function of the skeletal system in general? It provides support. What if we didn't have a skull? Right? Our brain would be like the surface would be all a big mushy face, right? So we have a skull to give us support and protection, right? We're going to support our heart by having the rib cage. We're going to support our brain by having the skull. The skeletal system also plays a really important role by storing calcium and phosphorus for us. So we store calcium in bone, and if we need more calcium, that calcium comes out of our bone. So we regulate calcium levels in the blood. And then the really, really important part of the skeletal system is to provide blood cells. Every blood cell that you have, your red blood cells, your white blood cells, your platelets, all of those are born in your bone marrow. So the skeletal muscle plays a really important role in keeping your blood. The next muscular system that we're going to cover is the muscular system. Now, the muscular system primarily focuses on skeletal muscle. Skeletal muscle is going to be any muscle that's attached to the skeleton, and so it's not going to include cardiac muscle, and it's not going to include smooth muscle. So the muscular system is basically skeletal muscle, and then associated tendons. A tendon is a part of the muscle that attaches to bone. The function of the muscular system, you already know most of these already. Provides movement, provides protection and support for other tissues. You have layers of abdominal muscle that cover all your inside gooey bits, okay? And then a really important part of the muscular system is also to provide heat for you. Every time you work a muscle, it loses heat, and that heat keeps you warmer. Right now, your temperature is 97-ish degrees, right? And the outside environment is probably 70-ish degrees. How do we stay warmer than our environment? It's because of muscles. So as muscles contract, they release heat. That's why if you're sitting here listening to this lecture and you're just not doing anything and just slumping there, you're probably getting a little bit colder. But if you were actually working, wiggle your toes, contract your buttocks, whatever you want to do, if you start working a little bit of muscle, you'll start to warm up. Okay, so that's the muscular system. And then finally, we're going to be studying the nervous system. Now, we're only going to start the nervous system, and then 232, you'll take over the nervous system. So the nervous system includes the brain, spinal cord, and peripheral nerves. For us in this class, we're not going to learn about the brain. The brain is next term. What we'll be learning and focusing on are the spinal nerves, the spinal cord, and the peripheral nerves. What the nervous system does is it's all about control and coordination of all the different systems. So the nervous system is extremely important for making sure that all your organ systems work together in a coordinated way. It's also going to help us, the function is also going to help us respond to changes in the environment and help maintain homeostasis. That is going to be in our next video. We're going to talk more about homeostasis and feedback loops in the next video. So for this video, hopefully what you learned was, what is the difference between anatomy and physiology? What are the different subspecialties of anatomy? What are the different subspecialties of physiology? Then we talked about the different levels of organization, and what we're going to focus on in this class is going to be the tissues and organs and organ systems. And then I introduced really quickly the 4 different organ systems that you are going to be studying in this term, and setting you up hopefully for success in starting to get an idea of what we're going to be studying this term. All right, well, that is it for this video. I hope that you began learning some things, and in the next video, we'll start talking about homeostasis. All right, thanks very much.